Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. This is your DC Spotlight for the week of June 14th, 2022. Got approximately 11 books to talk about. Solid week. None of the big events that are going on. I mean, I guess Shadow War is over. Trial of the Amazons is over. So I guess we still have two events going on, but none of them dropped books this week. We still have Flashpoint Beyond, and we still have Dark Crisis, obviously. But neither of those have any books out this week, so a lot of the other stuff, I guess you'll say. But before we dive into the books for this week, we have to give our best wishes and thoughts to Tim Sale, who, according to Jim Lee, tweeted out earlier on Monday of this week that Tim was in the hospital in very poor health. I feel like, man, we've been losing comic book legends left and right lately, and I certainly hope we don't have to add Tim Sale's name to that list. I feel like Tim's relatively young. So obviously the things that he's done, especially in collaboration with Jeff Loeb, think about things like all those colored books, like Spider-Man, Red and Blue, Daredevil Yellow, Superman, Man for All Seasons. Probably the most famous book he did was the Long Halloween, Batman story. So he's definitely an iconic artist, sort of a throwback. And again, we wish him the best. So what do you think about this week of books, Rocky?
I thought it was kind of meh. I mean, it's always a difficult question to answer whenever we pose each other that question, because when you have 11 books, it's not to say some weren't maybe a couple were really good, but this one in particular felt like kind of a meh week. But there were some. I think there were some standouts that that are worthy of mention, and we'll definitely give a shout out to those that deserve it. But for the most part, I think I was a little bit underwhelmed, and there's a lot of competition out there. But we'll get into it and to give viewers the details and listeners the details.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it. A lot of competition. That's certainly the case. So let's go ahead and dive in. Batgirls number 7, part 1 of 2, Bad Reputation, continues to be written by Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad. Robbie Rodriguez is on the art this issue rather than Jorge Corona, as it has been before. But I got to be honest, until we were getting ready to do this review, and I was getting all the credits up on my screen, I didn't even realize that it wasn't Jorge Corona. That's how similar Robbie Rodriguez's art style is. However, one of the things that Robbie Rodriguez doesn't do is he doesn't put that ink splatter all over the book that Jorge Corona does. And I kind of appreciate that because you could see it on the cover that he does. There's a ton of ink splatter, and I'm over it at this point. Stop with all the ink splatter. It's not necessary. So the art is solid. It's been solid throughout in terms of storytelling, but again, it's just not an aesthetic that I really enjoy. But be that as it may, Robbie Rodriguez is handling the line art for this issue. Rico Renzi does the colors. Becca Carey is on letters. Becca Carey's fantastic. She's such a rising star. And I actually had an interview with another creator who Becca Carey is lettering his book as well. It'll be up on Thursday. And we go into some detail on Becca's talent. So I want to give her a shout out. As far as the story goes, interesting that it's a two-parter. You don't see very many two-parters anymore. Everything is 6 parts, 5 parts written for the trade and whatnot. So kind of interesting that they're going with 2. Clearly, focusing on Seer, we get some information on exactly who Seer is. We saw her show up at the watchtower, clock tower, whatever you want to call it, last issue, despite the fact that she was responsible for destroying it and had been at odds with Oracle and the Batgirls. Seems like she's trying to make amends. And what's the saying? A friend in need is a friend indeed. And that's certainly what Seer seems to be. She's in over her head. Seems to be a little bit of I don't want to say spoiled brat because, she grew up with nothing and kind of scrounged around for her technology, clearly a genius. But she's not a good person. She has that bratty personality anyway. Like, why are you getting involved with the adults? I'm not trying to belittle, but she sort of made her bed, got herself in over her head by messing around with things that she shouldn't have been messing around with. and now she's in trouble and she's going to the Batgirls. And there's a scene early on, and again, the Oracle has, you know, created a plan, and hey, we're gonna use her as bait to try to capture the Saints who have escaped from police custody. And there's a scene early on where the Saints have tracked Seer down. They feel betrayed by Seer. They're basically going to wipe her out. And Seer's asking Stephanie Brown and Cassandra Cain for help. And Stephanie Brown's like, nah, we're not going to help you. Sorry. Turns around and walks away. And the reason for that, it's all according to Oracle's plan. They want the Saints to believe that there's ill will and the Batgirls aren't going to help Seer out, so that they can basically track Seer back to the Saints headquarters or whatever. But there was a part of me when I was reading it that really wanted Stephanie Brown to be going, you know what? You did it to yourself.
Yeah.
See you later. We're not going to help you. It's your problem, you know? And I know that's not heroic and it's not the right thing to do or whatever. But there's a part of me that, you know, that feels that way. Like this, you stuck your nose in where it didn't belong. And oh, if it isn't the consequences of your actions, you know, like learn your lesson.
Well,
So,
you make a good point, but it also flows back to Fear State. The Seer throughout Fear State was clearly displaying psychopathic tendencies. This
yeah.
is, to me, this feels like reverse storytelling or reverse engineering of a story where we're dealing with somebody that was clearly psychopathic in their tendencies, engaged in murderous activities, murdered hundreds of people in her, as far as I'm aware, from Fear State. And now all of a sudden we're supposed to feel sorry for Seer because she had a troubled childhood and she looks like a kid, even though she's got the intellect of an adult. This didn't work for me, but anyways, that's
No, I mean, it's a good point. And the only thing I'll say in relation to that is, yeah, she's a kid, and obviously kids make poor choices, and they oftentimes don't, you know, realize the consequences of their actions. That's why you don't, you know, try kids who make poor choices as adults, because, you know, despite the fact that she might be a genius level intelligence, she clearly doesn't have the maturity of an adult. So yeah, you want to give her the benefit of the doubt. Certainly she belongs locked up or in some sort of care facility. Because yeah, despite this, you know, her trying to work with the Batgirls or whatever, she's not doing it out of like some sense of goodness or some sudden understanding of right and wrong. She's doing it out of necessity because she got herself into this situation and now she needs help to get out of it. So yeah, not a character I really enjoy or care about. And yeah, this is another one where maybe, I mean, I don't think she's a James Tynion creation, right? Wasn't it another one of the, can't even remember who all was involved with Fear State at this point. So anyway, yeah. I mean, it's okay. At least there's for whatever reason, there's a portion of this story. There's something about this issue that makes it feel less adolescent. We've talked a lot in the past about Batgirls feeling like it feels and looks like it should be aimed towards kids, but clearly it's not, because there are tons of adult themes in it. And maybe that just goes back to Jorge Corona's art style. I'm not really sure. I couldn't say, but yeah, I mean, I'm coming to accept this title for what it is. And I feel like this was a little bit of a better issue. Not that it still doesn't have problems, but at least I feel like the story's moving forward. Could I do without this title? 100%. It's not like, oh my God, I must read Batgirls every month. But I gotta give it credit that it does feel like it's improving. The writers seem to be finding their footing. So, yeah. But yeah, Seer as a character, nah, not for me. Don't care for the character at all. As far as I'm concerned, you can throw her in the trash bin with throw in there next to Clown Hunter. So, yeah. Anything to add, Rocky?
Yeah, well, I would say that this is, I would have liked to have this origin for Seer. We learn a lot more about Seer. She basically had a very sort of a tropey childhood and sort of dysfunctional childhood, abused by her father. Ultimately her mother left her. Her father left her. She was obscure, abandoned. She was an easy to forget child. This is Seer describing her own childhood, and ultimately she feels like she faded away. And what I find really interesting here is that when the Saints want to get the revenge on Seer, because the Seer manipulated the Saints into believing that Simon Saint was still alive and giving the orders, but he really wasn't. So the Saints want revenge on Seer. well, they capture Seer, and of course, that's all kind of a setup by Oracle and the Batgirls, and they're following Seer back. And I really like the fact that the Seer's private headquarters was actually underneath the Penguin's Iceberg Lounge. And what's really great here, and I want to give some credit to Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, the writers. I like the fact that they made this a little bit more exciting. They incorporated Nightwing here, Nightwing and Oracle. They go to the gala at the Iceberg Lounge, all undercover, of course, because ultimately they know what's underneath the Iceberg Lounge is where the Saints are doing their machinations, and the Saints ultimately want to use Seer to manipulate the media again to convince them that Simon Saint is still around and that the Saints are his lieutenants. So it's kind of a really the plan doesn't make a lot of sense. It's a really stupid plan. It doesn't. I don't believe that Gotham would be made to believe that Simon Saint is still alive. He's been well established as being dead. But at least it's really come into play. And I thought you were being very diplomatic with your words about the art. I thought the art is substantially better. This felt like a little bit more in tune with the fact that this is adult content. This kid is a kid that has psychopathic tendencies, and it's a very tough call. And I'm glad at least that Stephanie Brown had expressed some reservations about helping this kid, as you bloody well should. Ultimately, they're good people. They're the good guys. The Batgirls are going to help anybody, no matter how bad, and they do so. But I'd like to see Stephanie Brown pausing for thought, because I certainly did as a reader, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, you included, and others that will wonder why this sudden concern about Seer. So because she went from this powerhouse supervillain, almost elevated in fear state, to being this little kid that we're supposed to feel sorry for. Doesn't quite jive, but I kind of like that Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad, they're trying to ride this line between making this comic book almost appear like it's for kids, but yet they're dealing with very adult story sensibilities, adult themes. And so they're riding a very fine line here. And to a certain extent, they are literally the authors, literally, of their own misfortune in that challenge. But it's a little bit more palatable at this stage in the game. So this is actually one of my favorite issues yet, because it actually feels like this feels a little bit more believable, and the art really helps. Some of the art here is fantastic. The pages, there's a page here where Barbara Gordon looks absolutely gorgeous approaching the Iceberg Lounge. The coloring, the lighting in the background, it looks really good. She looks sexy. She looks beautiful. And when she meets up with Nightwing, there's some really nice scenes here in the background. And so I would encourage people that have maybe been avoiding this title because of maybe if you're going to pick it up, I think this is the best issue in my view since issue 1.
Yeah, I won't argue with that. It does feel more adult, and yeah, you wonder. We talk about trying to ride that line between, is it for younger readers, is it for older readers? I wonder how much that aim at a younger is editorial. When I talked to Becky and Michael at WonderCon, they talked about it. Yeah, it's for adults. I think that's the tack they want to take. So I don't know. Maybe it all goes back to Jorge Corona's art and how it looks sort of juvenile. We've talked extensively about the ink splatter. Maybe that's why he puts it on there, try to bring some angst into it. I don't know. But anyway, let's move on. The next book we're going to talk about, sort of similar in this idea of dinosaurs, got to be aimed at younger readers, but pretty violent. And we talked about in the first issue, that same kind of thing. Is it for younger? Is it for older? Who can say? But it's Jurassic League #2. It's written by Juan Gedeon and Daniel Warren Johnson. The art is by Juan Gedeon. Colors by Mike Spicer. Letters by Farron Delgado. What'd you think about the second issue of this?
I like this substantially better than the first one. At the first one, I had a hard time getting into it because it just feels so eclectically different. And I love Daniel Warren Johnson's stylistic art, even though he wasn't technically the artist in the first issue. Gideon is copying his style, and to really great effect. But this I really got into this. This issue, we get more into the meat of the story, and this young kid caveman, this young cave boy is trying to talk and express his gratitude to I guess Batman, and I'm going to forget the names of these actual characters. They got what's the Batman character called? They got dinosaur
I
names.
think it's Batsaurus and
Bat
Supersaurus and
right.
Wonder Dawn. I
Thanks.
think that's
Yeah,
their names.
Batsaurus. Yeah, but Batsaurus doesn't want anything to do with the kid, although he's protecting him. And Supersaurus. This what I love here is the fast pacing and it's action packed, and we get a lot of story. And in relatively short period of time, in like 22 pages, we get a hell of a lot of story here. We get the Trinity meeting up, ultimately doing battle against Gigantosaurus and I don't know the Jokersaurus. I'm sure I'm going to butcher those names, but uh, I thought this was very well done. The art is really it's visceral, it's action packed, it's fantastic, it's gory, it's Batasaurus, with this, trying to understand this cave boy. They speak different languages. While they end up meeting up with Supersaurus, who's in this big battle with Gigantosaurus and almost like a Bizarrosaurus of some kind, and Supersaurus gets defeated, but then Batman shows up, and they ultimately meet up with the Wonder Woman version, whose name I forget, but this
Wonder
is
Dawn.
Wonder Dawn. Yeah,
Wonder Dawn. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, they look like dinosaurs, so they're not attractive looking creatures. Obviously, they're dinosaurs, but there's something fun about them, and there's actually seems to be a story here. Each one of them has a story, and of course, we know the general stories, but we know that there's a backstory from issue 1 about I guess Wondersaurus, and then with Batasaurus and Supersaurus. I'm actually really curious to see where this is going. This is just like fisticuffs. This is like WWF fisticuffs, and they're in battle here, and this is all battle mode. This is like Transformers with dinosaurs on steroids, and it's like I said, this was a lot of fun. This was, I gotta say, like the action packed the action packed nature of this, it did put a smile on my face. Again, it's a little tropey. It is predictable in some respects, but it is fun. I actually think that this is the audience that this is made for. I guess it's me now, and I guess if this is definitely all ages, this is just plain a lot of fun. And I would actually, by the end of this second issue, I'm now thinking I would love to see this as a cartoon, a DC animated cartoon. I think this would be awesome. It just puts a shit-eating grin on my face. What do you think?
Yeah, I enjoyed this issue a lot more than the first one as well. Again, it's still sort of straddling that line between, is it for younger, is it for older? Especially when Wonder Dawn takes her club right up the side of one of the, I think it's Giganta. Just, yeah, it's a fascinating and wonderful scene. Almost a full page splash when she just swats Giganta. So that part's interesting. I also like the whole idea of, these demons or this darkness coming from underground that has come to kidnap these humans, and obviously the whole analog with Superman, Supersaurus, what have you, a being of an alien being, of two worlds, and taken in by humans and taught their ways and whatnot. He can speak dinosaur, he can speak human. He's kind of the translator for Batman or Batsaurus or whatever at one point. So I like a lot of those ideas, and I found myself thinking, well, man, I'm not necessarily digging the dinosaur aspect of it, because that's the part that makes it feel like it's for kids. Maybe if we could remove that, but then the whole story wouldn't work. It wouldn't make sense, right? Yeah. I mean, the whole reason that it is what it is because they are dinosaurs. So I guess you just have to, take it for what it is, and it does allow for some pretty crazy visuals. So yeah, I think at the end of the day, you used the right word. This is fun. It's lighthearted. You have to take it for what it is. And yeah, I think for somebody around 10, 11, 12 years old, this is a great book to get them excited about reading comics. So the art by Juan Gedeon, I think it's solid. I would be curious. I think if Daniel Warren Johnson had done the art, it might be a little more visceral, and maybe it would come across as a little darker, and maybe they wanted to try to keep the story as lighthearted and fun as possible. Certainly seems that way with the Mike Spicer color, so I think that's probably the choice there. And I don't know, maybe Gedeon is a little bit quicker than Daniel Warren Johnson. I know Warren Johnson puts a lot of detail in his art, so he's not the quickest artist, but ultimately, it's a lot of fun. And yeah, the second issue definitely improved upon the first. So number 2 of 6, it's a 6-issue limited. So more to come. All right, up next, I Am Batman. We're up to issue number 10 of this. Still written by John Ridley. Christian Duce is the artist. Rex Locus on colors. Troy Petrie on letters. I love this issue. It's my favorite issue yet of the series. I continue to sound like a broken record here. Taking Jace Fox out of Gotham City, getting him out from under the shadow of Bruce Wayne was the perfect choice to get the series moving, establish Jace as his own character, give him his own story, his own momentum. The fact that he's called Batman, again, I'm of two minds, right? Like if you give him his own identity and don't say, why does he have to be a derivative character? Why does this character of color have to be, taking up the mantle of some white guy? Then you have half the people complaining, saying, what, he's not worthy? You can't have a black guy be Batman? He's not worthy? So you create his own identity and give him his own, different identity that's not Batman. Then you have half the people going, what, he's not worthy of the mantle of Batman? So you can't please all the people all the time, right? It's an age-old problem. That being said, like running around with a bunch of different Batmen, it can be problematic, and we'll talk about that in a second when we get to Future State Gotham. Same thing with Batgirls. I'm like, how many different Batgirls do we need? Like, it's starting to become a problem for me. Just give everybody their own damn name, or like in fact, if we go to talk about the Tim Drake special, it's that same problem as well. I just wish if you're a different person, unless the old one's dead or has retired or has relinquished it to you, then call him something else. Just give him a different name at this point. But anyway, let me get off my soapbox and talk about the actual issue. It's a lot of fun. It's very fast paced. We've got Batman basically confronting the mayor, saying, hey, we're not accusing you of anything, but we're saying that ManRay, the victims that he's had are people with power who've done terrible things. And if you're hiding something and you let us know what that is, that might help us stop him. And the mayor's like, I haven't done anything wrong. I don't know why he's after me. And both, you can tell that both Jace Fox and Detective Chubb are sort of skeptical of that. People don't get to be the mayor of New York City without having some skeletons in the closet, but he's not willing to disclose what they are. So why ManRay's after him, we don't really know. Meanwhile, you have the police officers who, I won't go so far as to say they're corrupt, but they definitely are used to taking the law in their own hands. They're definitely more old school. They identified more with the old police chief who liked to break the rules to his benefit, who wasn't a fan of having Jace Fox and Batman working with the New York City Police Department. They're gunning for ManRay, and in no way are they planning on taking him alive. They want revenge. They're not good people. That there's no other way to put it. So you've got that stuff going on as well, while ManRay attacks the mayor, takes out the mayor's security. He's obviously a very good tactician. He plans ahead, not unlike Batman himself. So it leads to this confrontation outside City Hall. You've got ManRay there. You've got these corrupt cops there ready to kill him. You've got Jace Fox trying to stop that. And you've got Chubb in the middle. So, again, high-paced or fast-paced, a lot of action. I really enjoyed the issue. The Christian Duce art is fantastic. The colors work really, really well. I definitely enjoyed this issue of I Am Batman more than I enjoyed the June issue of the regular Batman series. So what do you think, Rocky? Are you enjoying it as much as I am? I think you might be muted. There you go. Nope, still can't hear you.
Sorry about that. I am very much enjoying this issue, and it's really nice to see John Ridley come into his own here, because we've been critical of John Ridley. I think when he first started on the Jace Fox Batman character, Fear State, I think for a whole slew of reasons, some of it maybe beyond his control, it was hard for a lot of us to get to sort of accept this sort of Jace Fox, and there's a lot of people sort of questioning why Jace Fox? Why do we need a black Batman? Why do we need another Batman, regardless of anything? Because we've had so many iterations over the years. Well, You know, I tell you what, there's no such thing as bad stories. There's only bad writers. And John Ridley, this is him. This is a really good story. He's come into his own. He's finally, I think, really reached a part where he truly understands Jace Fox. He's built a great mythology for him, a great history for him. He's given him his own city, his own relationships, with the police department of New York City. With he's got his own supporting cast. He's got a love interest and yet another potential love interest. He's got a fan, and he's lucky enough to be drawn by Christian Doucet, fantastic artist on this. Great action sequences. This is a Batman who was flawed. He's not the greatest fighter. He's learning as he learned here against the central villain here, and he's done a really good. This is fun. I was looking forward to this issue to see how far he would go, and and there's a moment here near the end where. Unfortunately, the detective has to take down another cop that was going to use lethal force against what's the bad guy's name again?
ManRay.
ManRay. I can never forget that. It's such a odd name. Doesn't look like a ManRay, but anyways, you know, I'm really curious to know more about Man-Ray. I don't think we know enough about his motivations, other than the fact that he's just another Looney Tune. I mean, it's been said that Jace Fox tends to attract the loonies, the crazies to New York City, just like Bruce Wayne as Batman attracts the crazy people to Gotham. So that seems to be just a habit. If you adopt the name Batman, you can expect to have a crazy rogues gallery. But this is a lot of fun. John Ridley has. I think he's earned this. He's went through a lot of he's taken a lot of slack on this character from the beginning. But I think from the beginning of this series, I think he's really made it his own.
Yeah, I was trying to put my finger on what made this issue so great, and I don't want to say that I don't enjoy the character stuff or the family dynamic. The Fox family. Like I oftentimes have compared I Am Batman to that Fox drama Empire, which has to do with a black family that is in the music industry, just because it oftentimes this I Am Batman story has such a soap opera feel with the different relationships between the members of the Fox family. We don't get any of that here. There's no Fox family development or any part of that. So, I don't want to say that's the reason I liked this so much, because there's still character work here. There's some great character work. If you remember a couple of issues ago, Jace Fox got his butt handed to him by ManRay. So much so that it took me out of the story. I'm like, man, this guy's supposed to be Batman. He can't even take down this villain. And then, you turn the page and John Ridley immediately addresses that with Jace Fox himself having these doubts. Like, man, I just got my ass handed to me. What am I doing? And so when he goes to confront ManRay this time, there's obviously some doubt, and it ends up working, as he overcomes that doubt that he has. Like, hey, is this guy going to defeat me again? So there is some good character work here. It didn't involve the Fox family themselves. So I don't know. Maybe I want the Batman title to be more of a solo title. That certainly hasn't been the case in the regular Batman series for a long time. He's got such a giant supporting cast these days. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have Wonder Woman number 788, The Villainy of Our Fears, Part 2. This is also written by Michael W. Conrad and Becky Cloonan. Emmanuel Lupacchino on pencils. Wade Von Garabager handles the inks. Tamara Bonvillain on colors. Pat Barroso on letters. I have a feeling I know your thoughts on this, Rocky, but let us hear them anyway.
Well, I hate being so predictable, but let me just give a shout out. There's some interesting alternate covers. That I don't know who the alternate cover artists are.
That one's Paul Pope.
Paul Pope. Well, it's different. I actually I wish DC would have more of a variety of cover artists, and I actually like that. Wonder Woman needs more. I think she gets a little bit cliche. Too much Jenny Frison. Too much. We've had years of Adam Hughes. We've had years of Jenny Frison. It's nice to see more stylistic versions of Wonder Woman on the covers, and I hope they keep that up. So both these covers are actually pretty darn good. But now the story here, I don't know what it is with Becky Cloonan and Michael W. Conrad. They struggle with Batgirls, and perhaps I can throw them and give them a pass on Batgirls because they had no control over who the initial artist was. But I actually feel that the pages of Wonder Woman here with what they're doing with Dr. Psycho, this feels like it's kind of silly as well, like really, really silly. And yet it's a very, very serious topic. and yet it looks like it's being treated like a joke, but yet it's kind of silly, and it's kind of serious. I mean, we have Dr. Psycho here who is selling milk extra, and it's anyone who's involved in social media and in the last few years with the toxic social environment, cultural environment that we're in, milk is associated with white supremacy, and here he is selling milk extra, and he's manipulating the masses, and Dr. Psycho manipulates things behind the scenes, and he has in his manifest destiny cult that he's creating. He has all these angry men. We still don't know what Dr. Psycho wants. We still don't know what Dr. Psycho's message is. The message is how he had, but Steve Trevor, with the help of the diagnostic labs and through Etta Candy, through Checkmate headquarters in Washington, they suspect that he's put something in this milk, because this milk product is selling a lot, and perhaps it's manipulating minds. At least, I mean, I hope it is. The issue is called The Villainy of Our Fears. And I mean, oddly enough, we have all kinds of men. We have white men and black men as well protesting, called milkmen. I mean, the signs are kind of ridiculous, and they're against Wonder Woman. Well, why are you against Wonder Woman? Okay, you don't like women? That's it? Like, what specifically don't you like about Wonder Woman? None of this is really stated. And what really bothers me about that, is this just blind misogyny? And I guess maybe it is, but I just think that it cheapens it. And I don't like how they play fast and loose with this. Well, I guess these are just misogynists that they hate women. What exactly is their beef? Okay, so then they're being controlled. Put something in their milk. But again, what's their reasoning? I didn't quite get a handle on what's the motivation of Dr. Psycho. What is this manifest movement? I'm just trying to get a handle on it. Like, it just feels so silly. It lacks any degree of verisimilitude. Because if you're going to hint at politics in comics, which is touchy enough in today's comic book culture, let's be blunt. But if you're going to touch upon this sort of political issues in comic books, being this unspecific and almost insultingly simplistic, I don't know how this really helps the story. And Wonder Woman obviously has issues with Dr. Psycho, but even Wonder Woman, she seems so upset. Green Arrow and Superman in the Hall of Justice, there's a, Green Arrow refers to Wonder Woman being a mess, kind of implied he didn't mean to hurt Wonder Woman's feelings, but he implied that this was Wonder Woman's mess because out of the trial of the Amazons, Wonder Woman gets back to the Hall of Justice, and there's protests by this manifest destiny cult protesting, and they're anti-woman and anti-Wonder Woman. Well, why? And it's all a setup so that Dr. Poison can arrive on the scene with her syringe. It's almost like an episode of Super Friends. Well, she arrived and she's walking around with this on her fingertips. She's got like a needle, and she pricks Steve Trevor, and then she'll prick Siegfried, and this seems so one-dimensional, and Dr. Psycho is so obviously misogynistic. Why is Dr. Psycho following him? Why does she's a female villain. Doesn't she have any agency? She doesn't even stand up for herself to Dr. Psycho. This whole thing just seems so crazy, and I'm just trying to, I don't know, it just seems so silly to me. Wonder Woman came out of dark death metal looking for a lurking threat. She just saved the multiverse. And now Dr. Psycho's master plan is that he actually thinks people are going to think that Wonder Woman tried to kill him. That Wonder Woman has this goal to put down all men on the planet. Like, where's this? It just seems so silly. And there's been no build up to this. It's just, in my view anyway, it just seems silly. Anyways, I don't want to belabor the point. You could probably guess what I was going to say. I just wish that I don't feel that anything's at stake here. So what if Dr. Psycho, so what if he's a misogynist and he's kind of a jerk? Is that really a villain? Like, I mean, yeah, that's wrong. It's a terrible thing. Don't hate women. Okay, I get the message, but is this the bad guy? Is this the bad guy? He's selling milk, which is a symbol for white supremacy. He sounds like a self-help guru that's manipulating men into hating women, both white men and black men. So we get mixed signals. He's got milk, and then it affects all men. Something's in the milk, and then at the end, the Duke of Deception shows up at the end, because the real person behind the scenes, the one that's manipulating, we still don't know who's the master manipulator behind all of this, but this master manipulator sends to Dr. Psycho, in a coffin of all things, Dolos, the Duke of Deception. And the Duke of Deception in Wonder Woman lore was often someone who would manipulate minds and what have you. But why do you need the Duke of Deception if you're already manipulating minds through poisoned milk? Or it just seems so silly. I mean, Villainy Incorporated, and this is such a silly plot. I mean, this is something that I would read in a really silly plot from the Golden Age version of Wonder Woman. And while it's maybe kind of fun, in this day and age, I was really hoping for a little bit more sophistication and more of a feeling of verisimilitude in this. But I'm not really getting it. It just feels silly, and it's making a mockery out of what could be a very serious issue with some interesting themes, but they're just made a mockery of. But anyways, I don't know, that's how I feel, but I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the motivation, first of all, I didn't know about the whole milk white supremacy thing. I don't know. Maybe I don't watch enough
Well, that
news.
it goes right back to the 1920s, the use of milk, and oh yeah, and in fact, in 2017, milk replaced Pepe the Frog as the symbol for white nationalism on
Yeah,
Twitter.
had absolutely no clue. So that does make a little more sense to me now. That they're using it, because yeah, that's obviously the metaphor that's being made. Yeah, Dr. Psycho hates Wonder Woman, and I guess in his mind, it's right there in the name. She's a woman. She's kind of the epitome of a strong woman. So yeah, it's never clear to me why he hates her. It's also really silly that anybody, to use your word, would ever basically choose his side over her. Somehow he's this big social media star. Like I don't get it, unless you are really brainwashing people with your milk. But yeah, it does. This whole protest for Wonder Woman does seem to come out of nowhere, and I sort of feel like anybody that would be looking at this would say, well, looking at this protest would say, well, these people are idiots for protesting somebody who's helped save the multiverse, many, many times over. So yeah, it lacks a ring of truth. But I will say that it does at least sort of focus on a Wonder Woman centric villain. I think that she does need to have her, rogues gallery leveled up. I don't know if this is doing it the right way, but it is reminding us that yeah, she does have Dr. Psycho as a villain who, or a nemesis who, maybe isn't as capable as he, for some reason, as people seem to think he is. So there's that aspect of it. As far as the art goes, it's okay. It's not the best Emmanuel Lupacchino art I've seen before. It's just not as much detail. And I'm not a big fan of Doctor. As much as I'm saying, I enjoy the fact that we're getting some Wonder Woman specific villains. I'm not a big fan of Dr. Psycho. Maybe that's just because I can't take him seriously. He's a short little troll looking guy with these, stupid ideas. So who will end up being the mastermind behind him, man behind the curtain? Maybe Cersei would be my guess. So I guess we'll have to wait and see. But yeah, Wonder Woman continues to have a lot of potential and maybe not quite live up to all the potential that it has. So anyway, let's move on. Up next, we have No Naomi, if I can speak. Naomi, issue number 4. This is season 2. It continues to be written by Brian Michael Bendis and David F. Walker. Jamal Campbell handles the art and the main cover. Wes Abbott on letters. Jamal obviously colors his own stuff. Again, super fast paced, a lot of action. My biggest complaint, I'll go back. We've talked about this extensively, especially the last time we covered an issue, how the events in this issue take place long before a lot of the events that take place in Brian Michael Bendis' Justice League. So early on in the Brian Michael Bendis Justice League, if you recall, Naomi and the Justice League go to her home planet and they confront Zumbato or whatever the heck his name is. and if you don't understand, if you haven't read that sort of stuff, it may be easy for you to not realize that, hey, all these events that are happening in this series, Naomi season 2, they happened before that. It's all before that. Naomi at this point in this issue has not gone back to her own planet. She has not confronted Zumbato herself. So as much as I enjoy this, you got to keep that in the back of your mind that, hey, there's context here. This should have come out 2 years ago. And I know Jamal Campbell's not the fastest, although his art is gorgeous and I'm willing to wait for it. And Brian Michael Bendis has a lot of stuff going on as well, as does David F. Walker. And when you have multiple writers, sometimes things don't line up the best. But it is problematic. We have talked about it extensively, how Naomi, if DC wants her to be what they want her to be and what they're promoting her as, she needs to be in a book month in, month out, her own title to kind of flesh her out. So hopefully that will continue. The art is fantastic. There's specifically a double page spread as D is relaying his fight with Zumbato. And I thought that page was really fantastic. Again, a lot of kinetic art, a lot of action. Love the coloring, as has been the case throughout the series. A lot of blues and pinks and purples, which really sort of suit the aesthetic that they're going for. So I continue to enjoy this character. Do I think she's earned where she is? No, not yet, but she's getting there. But again, this series, if it's all about her earning it, and it does seem to be that so far, because she is becoming more mature and making more wise choices, making better choices, learning her powers, becoming more formidable. By the end of the series, I might feel like she's at a place where she should be in the Justice League, or could be, a junior member of the Justice League. But again, put the cart ahead of the horse, whether it was for scheduling or editorial issues or whatnot. That's beside the point. This should have come out 2 years ago, but I am enjoying it, especially the Jamal Campbell art. The guy's art is fantastic. So anything to add to that, Rocky?
Well, I can only add my confusion because other than you, I mean, I know you interviewed Brian Bendis, maybe he told you that, but it never occurred to me that I thought this was after her Justice League appearances and them going to.
No, she says she's never been to the homeworld.
Well,
so this has to be before, because she has been to the homeworld.
Well, no, fair enough. Except there's one major problem with that. And that is on the last page, when all of the Zumbato characters and the villains that they confront during her Justice League adventures appear on the last page. So, and she had never met them before. If she met them for the first time when she was on the Justice League, then how could she have met them before here? Unless, I mean, I guess maybe it's possible, or maybe this is just all an illusion or what have you, or misdirection. But I'm confused. I'm confused. And in fact, when but I'll grant you that I don't want to belabor that point, because I think it's clear that probably if you're a Naomi fan, you're probably better off just reading Naomi volumes 1 and volume 2 and forget about her Justice League stuff, because because it's just going to give you a little bit of a headache and frustrate you. Like, I'm kind of frustrated now. So what you said makes sense. And I acknowledge that's what it says in the issue, but it doesn't line up very well. I think it's a little wonky. It is a little wonky.
Very
the art
wonky.
Here, I grant you, the art here is fantastic. Campbell on the art is absolutely fantastic. This is really good. Now, there's a couple of things here and this is where the continuity gets wonky again. D, who is from Thanagar and he wants to protect Naomi, he goes to confront Zumbato on the world, and he ends up getting sent back. And he tells Naomi that he was born with a blessing and a curse, and that I am the one that can remove the curse. What curse is D talking about? Is there a curse on Naomi that we're not aware of? What's this curse that he's referring to? That's new. To my knowledge, I was not aware that Naomi was subject to a curse. Certainly, Naomi never mentioned being subject to the curse when she was in her homeworld on the pages of the Justice League, that I recall. But it's something to think about. There are moments here that I wonder that clearly Bendis is trying to establish. He always tries to have a lot of character moments. He's got character moments between Naomi's parents, who they're Thanagarian and Ranian. So the fact that they're opposites attract, and Thanagar and Ran are at war. They're two worlds that
Well, her
are
mom's her adoptive mom is human.
well, right.
Her adoptive stepfather is, or adoptive father is, yeah, from Ran.
Ran. So they're from
Yeah.
different worlds. Thank you. And
Right.
D is from Thanagar, and that's where
Thanagar,
the
right.
tension comes in. And D sort of like
Yep.
sort of like a friend of the family, quasi old enemy. But in any event, I'm not. This is extremely slow paced. It's extremely slow going. We're at issue 4 already, and we're now 10 issues in. We know very very little about Naomi's homeworld. As a matter of fact, just as a criticism on page 2, it describes this is the setup for issue 4, and it says when her mentor D disappears, Naomi goes after him, afraid that he has gone to kill Zimbardo, the monster who kills Naomi's parents and destroyed her birth world. It's worth noting that Naomi, even as readers in the first volume, we were only told that Zimbardo killed Naomi's home birth world. We weren't really shown it. We were shown it. We were shown a couple of double page spreads with Zimbardo destroying the world, et cetera, but it wasn't really told. A lot of the drama that lies at the foundation and origins of Naomi's story was told to us. It wasn't shown to us. This has violated the number one cardinal rule of comic book storytelling, that I'm not a comic book writer, but it's been said repeatedly. We as fans, we like to be shown stuff, not told. We've been told what Naomi's origin is and the origin of her home world. We really haven't been shown it. And that's the greatest disappointment here. As much as it's okay to get these character moments of Naomi's parents snuggling up and being sexy with each other and kissy, and Naomi having long protracted conversations with her overweight best friend and all this other jazz. I guess this is okay, but as an old school reader, and I realize this might not be written for me, I would really like to see a little bit more action, a little bit more. I mean, those character moments, I can imagine them occurring. I don't need to be shown them. Show me the action. Show me the origin. Show me the fun stuff. Show me this comic book needs more third acts, like in a movie, the action, as opposed to these long drawn out dialogue ridden character moments that actually aren't really character moments. They just drag something out. I've said this before. I always get the impression that Bendis is writing a screenplay. I think he's forgotten that Naomi was canceled. And I hate to be cruel, but I'm wondering if maybe this was it. You need action in a comic book, and this we just don't have enough action here. And we're at issue 4 out of 6, and I don't. How much can we learn in 2 issues? I don't think we're going to learn very much. Sadly,
Well, I'm gonna push back on that a little bit. As far as action, we do have the scene with her parents, which provides a lot of context. But I get it. Maybe we could do without it. But after those 2 pages, the entire issue is action. It's her seeing D. It's her screaming. It's her flying the ambulance. It's in the Hall of Justice with D going into cardiac arrest. It's D recounting his battle. Those pages are all action. And then, like I said, it's the cardiac arrest, and then it's the people coming to attack. So
yeah.
I felt like it was way more. I mean, the most action we've had in an issue so far. You know, maybe you're speaking to the series overall.
Well, I am, but I would just add that this issue ought to have started off, in my view. We didn't need. Why did we need we wasted almost the entire issue was her just taking D to the hospital. This issue could have started off on page 1 with D already in the hospital and talking. Did we really need what came before? Her reaction? I mean, the last issue ended with D showing up and injured. It could have started off with that. I mean, to me, if you want to move the story forward, the superfluous stuff where she's all upset and she's all emotional and everything and just sort of staring at him and all upset and talking to him while he's incoherent and mumbling and saying things. And again, the only thing we got from him in this entire issue was, I was born with a blessing and a curse, and I am the one that can remove the curse. That's all he says. That's the only clue we get in this entire issue. I mean, at this point, at this pacing, we're going to have 6 volumes to get her even onto her homeworld. And anyways, I'm ranting. I apologize. I'm personally frustrated, and I agree with you that something happened here, but I don't view what's happened in this issue as being as substantive as it could be.
You know what I would say to that? You need to stop reading Brian Michael Bendis stuff. You'll be a happier person.
Well,
Despite the fact that we try to cover all the DC stuff, I'm perfectly fine if you stop reading the Bendis stuff
well, I like
because
Joy Operations. I enjoy his Joy Operations. There's
I
action
mean,
and dialogue at the same time there.
this is his style. I mean, this is Bendis. This is decompressed storytelling. This is exactly what I expect from Brian Michael Bendis.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Fair enough.
So when in terms of Joy Operations, I would say the reason that feels like it moves a little faster is because it's not an established world. So some of what he's doing there is world building that's not necessary here. So maybe that world building is replaced by character moments in this, and that makes it feel even slower, as opposed to new information you're gaining in Joy Operations for the world building. But yeah, I mean, this is Brian Michael Bendis. Yeah, of course it's going to take 60 volumes to get the story. That's what you expect from a Brian Michael Bendis story, at least what I expect. So I'm not saying whether that's good or bad. I'm just saying it's to be expected. All right, up next we have Batman Urban Legends number 16. A lot of endings here. We got 3 stories that come to a conclusion. The Batman and Zatanna story, Bound to Our Will, part 6 of 6 by writer Vita Ayala. Nicola Sameja and Hayden Sherman are the artists. Nick Filardi on colors, Steve Wands on letters. There is one standalone story, Batman and Alfred in Some Things Remain, by writer Josh Trujillo. Rosie Campy is the artist. Marisa Louise on colors, Troy Petrie on letters. The conclusion of the Birds of Prey story, Birds of Prey in Memory Lane, part 3 of 3. Shea Grayson is the writer, Serge Acuna artist, Yvonne Placencia on colors, Josh Reed on letters. And then finally, Ace the Bat Hound and Hounded, part 6 of 6, from writer Mark Russell. Carl Mostart is the artist, Trish Mulvihill on colors, and Steve Wands on letters. So give us what you got for any or all or some. What are your thoughts?
Well, my favorite story is the actually, I'm actually critical of all the stories here, but I'm going to start off with the Birds of Prey story, because it's the one that I find a little bit frustrating, but it's uh, one of the things that I found interesting about the Birds of Prey story here, and I just want to give the credit. It's called Part 3 of 3 of Memory Lane, written by Shea Grayson, art by Sergei Akura, and uh, it ends very, very abruptly, and it's kind of interesting because James Tynion gave us a very interesting origin of Miracle Molly, where Miracle Molly is, of course, a member of this Birds of Prey, consisting of herself, Lady Shiva, Katana, and this new character called Ghost. And it ends up that Miracle Molly ends up being revealed as the one who actually was the traitor. She actually betrayed the Birds of Prey. Miracle Molly actually hired Birds of Prey. She actually manipulated events so to get Katana and Lady Shiva. She was the one that actually hired Lady Shiva, or got the this Ladaline character to actually retain Lady Shiva to find this character that actually had the character that had the cure. And because there was this metavirus that went around that this character, this Ladaline character, actually created. And this Ladaline character is a lot like Miracle Molly. She was someone who befriended, she was ostracized, or she was ridiculed and made to feel less than by her corporate bosses, when she was actually the one to come up with this program, and it's called Memory Lane, and it helped people remember things, and it helped people with their memory. And in any event, she felt she was ridiculed, and she was befriended by this janitor, and she used this janitor, this nice guy, and she had her janitor friend, I assume the identity of Richard Rowe, and it was Richard Rowe that hired Lady Shiva to find the another character, who's there's another character, Sorry here. Um, Man. In any event, there's another character here. I forget her name. Where they've been looking for her from the beginning, and she's actually the one that actually has the cure, and that's what it is. And Noah, this character named Noah, contains the cure, and Miracle Molly has been looking for this Noah character because, uh, well, now that they have the cure, they can. That was really the motive all along, and so what's frustrating about this is that Miracle Molly, this Ladlean character, has a origin that's practically identical to Miracle Molly. Miracle Molly has a connection to this Ladlean character, and I think that's why Miracle Molly helped her, because Miracle Molly also knows what it's like to be manipulated and put down and abused and used by corporate higher ups. And so Miracle Molly wanted to help her out and did so, but unfortunately, in this case, just like Miracle Molly, I thought was abusive to her own husband in her origin. This Ladlean character was abusive to her a janitor friend who assumed the identity of Richard Rowe at her request because he was just trying to help her. And this issue ends extremely abruptly. Lady Shiva ends up she manifests new. Apparently, she's got super healing powers. Katana is mortally wounded. Lady Shiva saves Katana's life, and ultimately that's really how it ends. There's never Lady Shiva and Katana. They talk about how they're going to confront Miracle Molly and get even with her. That never happens. It ends extremely abruptly. This feels very rushed, and I mention it because I was actually enjoying this story. I thought it was very good. I thought that Shea Grayson did a good job of expanding on Miracle Molly, giving her a friend, and Miracle Molly is imperfect. She's flawed, and I like that. She's an interesting character, and I like the Sladeline character and how she manipulated her janitor friend. These are flawed characters, very good. I would have liked to have seen this been a fourth. I would have liked to have had a fourth or fifth chapter on this, because otherwise it feels a little bit short. It feels like it's been given short thrift, in my opinion. Um, the I will say though, at the end, if I had to judge all these stories, the one that if I had to pick, probably the better, I do like Ace the Hound. The final story where Hounded the Drum, part 6 of 6, written by Mark Russell, Carl Marster is the artist. Batman ends up fighting the bear, and he ends up defeating the Russian oligarch that essentially, well, ultimate goal was to basically capture Batman and sell Batman off to the highest bidder. And it's visceral. I mean, the Carl Marstar's art is fantastic. He literally fights a bear, but he doesn't want to kill the bear or hurt the bear. And the action and the blood and it's just so well done. And there's a message here about cruelty to animals and the theme of the little. There's a story of that Mark Russell tells scripts about the little, sort of like a little drummer boy who attracts a bear. An old hunting story where a bear is wandering off, and the boy distracts the bear by banging on his drum to so the bear comes back and is ultimately attacked and killed. And it ends in much the same way, except for the opposite outcome with Batman essentially defeating the bear, and but Ace the Hound comes to his defense, helps Batman, actually rescues Batman, and even there's a great confrontation where, because Ace the Hound is actually used to be Joker's dog, and there's a confrontation there where the Joker recognizes the dog, and it's just very well done. And Batman, rather than let Batman die, Ace actually rescues Batman, manages to pull Batman to Safeway down a coal chute, and it's a really nice ending, and I think it's going to make a nice, at some point these stories, I think it might make a good collection in a trade, because I think a lot of these stories are deserving of it. As for the other stories, I'll give you comments on these and that one.
Yeah, the first story ultimately I felt like went on too long. We talked a lot about it um, previously, so I won't get too much into detail. I did like at the end how it really solidifies the special relationship that Bruce and Zatanna have. And I've said it before. I like Bruce and Zatanna as a couple more than Bruce and Selena, like infinitely more. So I appreciated that Vita brought us that, even though the story felt like it dragged a little bit. The second story also feels a bit abrupt. Um, I don't think it's bad, and I like the agency that it gives Alfred. And of course, it's a chance to see Alfred back in the DCU, which is always a good thing. Um, but yeah, it felt very anticlimactic. I mean, Alfred goes undercover to find out why these people are disappearing from this assisted living facility, and it takes him all of 30 seconds once he gets there to figure it out. I don't know. It felt a bit rushed, even though it did. Give us a chance to see Alfred. I also thought the art was kind of wonky by Rose Compey, but I'm just not a fan of their style. I find time and time again when I'm looking at this art, and I'm like, man, this art it's wonky. The facial features don't look correct. The anatomy, perspective doesn't look correct. And I look at who the artist is, and it's Rosie Compey. So yeah, it leaves a little bit to be desired. I think there's some basics that need to be gone over there. I agree with you on the Birds of Prey story. I felt like there's a lot of animosity when this team was put together, the way that Shea Grayson wrote it, but then they seemed to come together in issue 2, part 2, and now issue 3. Come to find out, Miracle Molly's the one that's the betrayer. It just didn't feel like that suited. I was happy that Miracle Molly. I mean, she was, maybe not even so much an anti-hero in her Batman appearances. She almost was all the way over to the heroic side, and now here she's leaning more toward the villainous side. Maybe that's what DC wanted. Maybe they thought she came across as too heroic in Batman, because when she was first introduced, we didn't know what she was going to be. Villain, hero, what have you. And I liked that they were leaning her more toward the hero side, even if she had a different perspective than a lot of heroes do. And now to have her betray, and it goes back to something that you yourself said, like, okay, maybe she's very sympathetic toward this Laliana character or whatever her name is, and that makes sense because she, like you said, she was mocked because she was just an entry level meta engineer, and everybody else on the board were all these males, and they didn't give credit to her idea or whatever. And that's something that Miracle Molly herself experienced. But here's the problem I have with it, right? Like, I can see that she would be very sympathetic toward Ladaline, but she herself then turns him around and manipulates. And is it men that she's manipulating? Because again, there seems to be this anti-misogynistic message from DC this month. No, she's manipulating her fellow females. Like, isn't this all about women power, birds of prey, women having agency, or whatever? Miracle Molly puts it all over on her female counterparts. That's the part that felt incongruous to me, right? I mean, she's doing this to help out her female friend here, but she's doing it at the expense of other females. Doesn't that go against the message you're trying to say? So I don't know. It didn't work for me, and like you said, it felt really rushed and very I don't want to say convoluted, but just very abrupt. That's the whole thing was. And the thing is, the first 2 parts felt like it was paced pretty well. And I sort of feel like if you didn't make the story as convoluted in the end as it appeared to be, if you didn't throw in this betrayal of Miracle Molly and have to use up space to explain that, if it had just been a straightforward, they go and they confront this Richard Rowe guy and he's the true villain, I think you would have had enough space to do what you needed to do, and it wouldn't have felt like so abrupt. Because I mean, it really feels like we're missing every other panel here.
Yeah. No,
I don't know.
the ghost character on top of the page that I'm showing here, the very final page, she says, "We're going to get Noah back, right?" And Katana says, "Something tells me the only way we're going to fix this mess." And then so they've made a concerted effort decision that as a team they're going to get Noah back. And then at the bottom of the page it says 1 week later. and then it has a radio broadcast summarizing
Yeah,
that Richard Rowe had an untimely death. So
it's dead. Yeah.
she actually killed. So they actually
Yeah.
killed her janitor friend, and so they killed a guy that was actually a friend of Ladaline, and then it just ends abruptly. And so now Miracle Molly, I had some sympathy for her in Fear State, but now she's absolutely complicit in cold-blooded murder. So this is definitely a bout shift in my mind.
Yeah, I agree 100%. The only thing I can think is they were planning on this being a lead into a Birds of Prey series, and they decided they weren't going to do a Birds of Prey series. Because, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's not even a whole panel. It's a panel with an inset.
I know.
The inset that gives us the title and the credits.
Mm.
It's like, yeah, I mean, even Ladaline said, you're getting too comfortable taking credit for my work, Mark. He's like, what? This was your idea. This was your idea. Are you crazy? Miracle Molly. No, she's brilliant. Right, I'm brilliant. Let's kill him. 1 week later, Richard Rowe's dead. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, the saving grace, I guess you could say, I mean, it is some sort of a radio broadcast or whatever we're hearing in the wake of Richard Rowe's untimely death. Maybe they killed Richard Rowe, in terms of like, okay, the identity of Richard Rowe.
Mm-hmm.
But really, when it comes down to it, they didn't kill this janitor who, was friends with them. So I don't know. It's messy. It's abrupt. It doesn't work. I kind of wish that, I was excited after the first part. I didn't know what to think. Second one, I was like, oh, this would make I would be interested enough. I think this would make a good series. Let's have another, Birds of Prey series. And now I'm like, man, I'm just sorry I read it in the first place.
Well, I'm not going to say I'm sorry I've read it. I still say I wish that this was a series, because I think this is kind of a wild card of a team. I actually kind of like it. And I actually like the idea. You and I had our differences of opinion on Miracle Molly. I kind of like her more on the villain side anyway, if I'm honest. And so I kind of wish this would be a 4 or 5 part Birds of Prey arc. And I would love a Birds of Prey series. Honestly, I think it would be.
I would like it after issue 2. I would not like it with Miracle Molly going all the way over to the villain side. And, that's the part that didn't work for me. For the last issue or last story here.
Oh,
the
sorry.
The Hounded Drum. I don't have that much to add to what you said. I think what I liked most about this series, or about this story, was the Mostert art. I like the kind of the sentimentality of it that Russell brings in terms of comparing humans to animals and talking about treating animals with respect and whatnot. It's a little ham-fisted, but I don't know, it works. I think we need to be reminded of that. And so even the scenes at the end where Bruce releases the bear that he fought into the woods, into the Wayne Wooded Reserve that's apparently next to Wayne Manor. I even enjoyed that. The fact that Flash gets the super speed turtle again, I enjoyed that. So yeah, it was all when all said and done, it was a fun series. So,
yeah.
or a fun story. All right, up next we have Superman, Son of Kal-El, number 12, script by Tom Taylor, pencils by Ciaran Tormey and Ruari Coleman. Inks are by Scott Hanna, Ruari Coleman, and Raul Fernandez, and Ciaran Tormey. So we got 4 people inking this. Maybe that's why the art's so wildly inconsistent. Colors are by Federico Blee and Matt Herms, and then letters are by Dave Sharp. Insiders is the name of it. Yeah, it was a bit of a rough. The art. Not only was the art inconsistent, I felt like it was a very inconsistent paced and plotted story. But I don't know. Maybe you feel differently. What do you think?
No, I don't feel differently. And the first thing I want to say is a couple of comments here. Just on the cover itself, the actual cover A has a great. It's a beautiful image, and I'm not sure who the cover artist is, but Superman, Son of Kal-El, he looks like a boy. He's drawn. He looks like he could be 14 or 15 years old. If I didn't know better, I think he has eyelashes. He's petting his dog. This does not look like a Superman. It looks like a Superboy. And
yeah, that's Travis Moore on that
Travis
cover.
Moore, beautiful art. Don't get me wrong, but this doesn't look like a Superman. And look, we've talked about this before. And if you're trying, the entire one of the challenges that Tom Taylor had when he took on this title, obviously, was we had an aged up John Kent who went from 7 years old to 18. First it was 17, then he was 18. So he became an adult overnight, and now all of a sudden he became a Superboy or a Superman overnight after that. So Tom Taylor had the challenge of really trying to convince us readers that this was a character deserving of the Superman mantle, and he's been working on that. And, you know, the jury is out, and readers have had different opinions on it. I think you and I I think we generally agree that John Kent has yet to sort of earn the mantle, but he's trying. But it really doesn't help when if you're selling this guy as a Superman, don't draw him looking like a boy, not on the covers. And again, that's just, it's a nitpick, but I think it's a legitimate one. But the covers generally, they're okay. I don't mind them. As for the story itself, I have this story consists of this is John Kent, Superman, along with Jay Nakamura. They end up confronting Senator Henderson, a member of Congress, with some videotape whereby they realize they've this congressman, he's a corrupt congressman who ends up being, this congressman is in fact Henry Bendix. This feels like very forced storytelling, because at the beginning of this, part of the issue I have with this series is that Superman, Bendis revealed Superman's secret identity to the world because Superman doesn't believe in deception. Then we got John Kent becoming Superman and falls in love with a young man, Jay Nakamura, who is engaged in killing and terrorism, but for a good cause, for an institution called Truth, which isn't affiliated.
Hold on a second. When has Truth killed people?
Truth has members of the Suicide Squad on it, and Truth has, well, they showed Truth killing people when he was leaving the island nation of Gamora. You can argue that it was in self-defense, but just bear with me for a second. This is the I'm going to turn this around. This is a criticism, and this is leading to the drama of this series, and this is what's leading to the controversy of this title, and this can be turned into a positive, but it hasn't turned into a positive yet. Where I'm going with this is, what is interesting about this title is that John Kent takes pride, literally pride, in, you know, he's opening up about who he is sexually. He kisses his boyfriend live on a Pride parade. We reviewed the Pride issue, and he loves this Jay Nakamura. Great. Unfortunately, Jay is affiliated with Truth. Jay wears a mask. He takes a camcorder with him to interview, to surprise a senator in Congress to interview him. They have the audacity to ask Lois Lane to come and join their Truth initiative. And they're going to go around, and they go around all over the world, breaking international boundaries to get stories. I mean, this is what Truth does. And so it's truth, justice, and a better tomorrow. That's what Superman's about. But now Truth has taken on a new meaning, and this is the concern I have. Truth now is associated with this, what is essentially an unaffiliated group of young journalists that are glorified YouTubers, not even affiliated with any country. They have a headquarters basically on a ship, and this is problematic. So what happens now is we have John Kent affiliated with Truth. We have him now upsetting some people's beliefs because of his sexuality. And so this is where the drama comes in. In this world where there is a toxic political and social cultural landscape, we have John Kent now, who has come out. He's bisexual. He's openly in that kind of relationship. He's involved with Jay Nakamura, who even Batman distrusts. And this is no wonder President Bendix, John Bendix of Gamora, is trying to utilize that against them, and with great effect. And what happens in this issue is that all that potential for drama, because I think a really good story is there that Tom Taylor introduced, and he didn't shy away from it, and he wasn't afraid to touch upon those political issues because it creates drama, and I say that as a compliment. Unfortunately, I find that the culmination of this ro- has been wrapped up a little bit too convenient, because the bad guy was sort of centered upon, you know, rather than stay in the background and continue his machinations. President Bendix ends up being revealed to be this Senator Henderson in Congress, and so it's quite obvious that very conveniently they have truth. They had a videotape of this senator being on the boat where these human traffickers were, or these people that they were using, because the what Bendis is doing is taking these people and giving them superpowers and controlling them and trying to create a metahuman network and trying to create a PR campaign against superheroes. So what started off on the surface, this was a series that started off on the surface touching upon very hotbed political issues and upset some sensibilities, and it's all been sort of like conveniently wrapped up, and probably that's for the better. I just found it very, very interesting, and it's going to be. I'm curious to see where it goes with it from here, because at the end, uh, Jason or Jay Nakamura, his identity is revealed, because he was a guy. He's a reporter for Truth. John Kent supports Truth. Lois Lane was asked to become part of Truth, but he's wearing a mask with a camcorder, and his identity is revealed. And at the end of this, with Jay Nakamura's identity being now revealed to the world's going to be able to piece together that Jay Nakamura was the same person that was kissing John Kent at that Pride parade, and they're going to connect the dots. And so, and the next issue, it says the nightmare begins. And I can see this being a nightmare, because from a storytelling point of view, and this is where I find this interesting. John Kent now, there's going to be a certain portion of the world media, let's face it, that is going to be against him. That they're going to worry that he is affiliated with this group whose loyalties are questioned. And also, because of his sexuality, that could be called into he can face criticism for that as well. And so I think that I got to give Tom Taylor some credit here, because these are issues that he is. I mean, they're they're right on the surface, but they're also underneath the surface of this story as well. And Tom Taylor has managed to kind of avoid dealing directly with them. But anybody who reads this knows that those issues are there. So that's what I find interesting about it. And that's why I find this Superman is very, very different than Clark Kent. This is a Superman, a young Superman who's dealing with stuff head on. And it seems like he's flying by the seat of his pants, but kudos to him, because he's literally putting himself out there, who he is, and that of course is symbolized by his coming out for that Pride parade. And I think all this is coming to a head. So this is the Superman mythology right now is more than just Superman revealing his identity to the world as Clark Kent, but his own son now coming out and his affiliation with Jay Nakamura. I see things getting really bad for young John Kent, and even his mother Lois Lane might not be able to get him out of it. But what do you think?
I think it's a big assumption to make that the Pride special is we're going to see consequences of that in the main series. I'm not saying that somehow somebody won't connect the knots and say, yeah, Jane Nakamura and John Kent are going out, and if this guy was with Superman, then yeah, they're working together. But I mean, there's nothing to say that won't happen. Clearly, the Nightmare Begins indicates that something bad is about to happen. As far as Truth goes, I see them in a completely different light than you do. First of all, in escaping, that was wartime. You called them murderers. You yourself said the argument could be made for self-defense. So, but whatever, that's all semantics and sort of pedantic anyway. I don't necessarily see it that way. I don't think most of the world would see it that way. We're talking about a vocal minority, in my opinion, at least as the politics of this real world exist. If Truth were to exist, you call them, instead of journalists, glorified YouTubers. Well, the fact of the matter is, social media, YouTube, Twitter, what have you, it's the cutting edge of news. It's where you can find news out quicker than any sort of old school like forget about what journalism used to be. That journalism as it used to be doesn't exist anymore. So I appreciate that what Tom Taylor is trying to do is tell a very modern story, because I feel like in terms of sensibility, in in terms of social issues, in terms of just the most modern, accurate reflection of, I don't want to say a woke society because that's the wrong word. The whole idea of woke now has this negative connotation, but in terms of the most realistic, accurate depiction of modern society, this is the book, right? Now, whether I want that in my comics is a completely different story. Completely different story. And the problem that I'm having is the argument could be made that in a lot of ways, DC is the most duplicitous of publishers. You know, I would say if you just take it overall nowadays, Marvel is much more conservative than DC. You know, DC seems to take the lead when it comes to diversity and things like, you know, pride and uh, LGBTQ and social issues and that sort of thing. But at the same time, if you look back at their history, certainly in the Silver Age, going into the Bronze Age, the shoe was on the other foot, and Marvel was the one that was, you know, tackling more real world issues than DC was. DC was, you know, the Silver Age was a lot of fantasy stories that didn't have any reflection of reality whatsoever. So I find it really interesting. What is the just average DC fan want? Do they want this much politics, this many issues, this many kind of real world dilemmas where there aren't real answers? You know, like you can understand why people feel the way they do about certain things. You know, you can, that's just their belief. It's how they were raised. You know, marriage is a man and a woman only, and, you know, things like that. Superman can't be a bisexual. You know, like I understand the worry. You know, they feel that it's, you know, eroding the fabric of their foundation of how they were raised. I get it. It comes from a place of fear, right? So I totally understand. So if comics are supposed to be escapism, and you want to go back and, you know, remember with fondness your days of reading DC when it was something completely different than it is now, yeah, I could see why it would be problematic. So I'm not going to argue, you know, whether that's the way this should be going or not, because I think that's a personal preference. What I will say is if you hate that stuff, don't read this comic.
Yeah,
You know,
for sure.
don't hate read it. Don't spend your money and then complain about it. Because if you don't like those things, then this comic is not for you, and that is perfectly fine. Go read Action Comics, because that's all about Superman and all the ideals that he stands for, and you will like that. You will love it. Great art, great story. Go read that. Don't read this. You will not like this. This is not for you. So that being said, the issues I had with this particular issue were more to do with technical. I don't think it's paced well. I think it jumps around. I think the art is wildly inconsistent. And again, there's 1,000 inkers on it, so you can understand why. I didn't particularly care for the way Lex Luthor was portrayed. Lex Luthor, again, is supposed to be what, second smartest, third smartest person in the DCU?
Yeah.
And Dick Grayson's just going to walk right into his corporate headquarters and plant a bug? Oh, well, he sweeps for bugs at the end of the night, so we'll just disintegrate the bug before then. What? Lex Luthor has a constant scan that's scanning for bugs. You
Exactly.
tell me
Yeah.
that's not a thing? That was so ridiculous. But again, trying to suit the story and what have you. So it's little nitpicky things like that where the story's not really working for me. And then as far as Jade Nakamura, yeah, I mean, I'm not a fan of, and I think I said this before, I'm not a fan of John's relationship with Jay, not because Jay's a guy, but because Jay's doesn't come across as particularly competent to me and never has. Like, what a dumb mistake to make to phase and go in and remove this little, you know, mind control device and then come out without your mask on. Like, I don't know. I don't care for Jay as a character, but not because he has pink hair, but just because I don't think he's a particularly intelligent individual, at least not as portrayed by Tom Taylor. So, yeah, it's so frustrating too, because Nightwing may be the most consistent title at DC, It's, fantastic issue in and issue out. And this one it fluctuates wildly. This was one of my least favorite issues of this series so far, and that should not have been the case. It's Superman, it's John Kent, it's Crypto. There's tons of action. It should have been great, but it wasn't. So, yeah, I'm just ready for something different with Superman at this point. So,
Yeah,
anyway.
it's we could you and I could talk at length about it. There's a lot more I could talk about, but we'd be going off on a tangent. But no, it's interesting to hear your comments because I do find that there's so much potentially interesting things that John Kent could be getting into. And I find I actually like the drama. I like the fact that he's different. He's than his father. He's not afraid of going out on a limb. And he clearly is doing that. Uh, I just wish that if you're gonna, I don't know, when you deal with social issues like this that are this important, Tom Taylor's he's kind of going halfway and then pulling back because he has to, because he can't quite go all there. But I kind of wish that, well, if you're gonna go halfway, I mean, in for a penny, in for a pound, just do it. And so it's these half measures what Tom Taylor's doing on this title that I wish he would just go that extra mile. But I realize that, you know, this is a title that ruffles so many feathers, and no matter what Tom Taylor writes, it seems it for this he's not clearly DC is not approaching this character in the same way that they traditionally have approached Superman. This is they've made up their mind about him, John Kent's youth, his charisma, his social activism, and that does lead to different kinds of stories where you're going to, whether you want it or not, you're going to end up with some political elements in it, whether you like it or not. And like you said, Jace, knowing that going in, you probably are advised, if you're not a fan of that, then maybe give this title a pass by and just pick up Action Comics.
Yeah, I agree. And again, I appreciate that Tom Taylor's doing it. I agree with you that he could be going farther. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what the right balance is. I'm sure it's very difficult.
Yeah.
My whole thing and the issue that I have with it stems more from just the technical aspect. The technical part of this comic is, for me, why it just seems so inconsistent at times. And that seems like the part that you should be able to get, that should be the easy part. The same artist, the same writer, the same creative, just get the same creative team. Yeah. And if you need to skip a month to keep the same creative team together to give a consistency of product, then do that. Or get Seer and Torme to skip a couple issues, bring in a fill-in artist for 2 issues, and get Seer and Torme working, a couple issues ahead to give him that leeway so he can do 6 issues in a row. But it's the technical aspects of it that are inconsistent that drives me crazy. So anyway, let's move on. Future State Gotham number 14, written by Dennis Culver. Art is by Giannis Giannis and Jeffo. Cover by Simone DeMeo. Variant cover by Mike Bowden and Rex Locus. There is a backup here. Once again, we're reprinting a story from Batman Black and White that's less than a year old. But at least it's a fantastically written and illustrated issue. It's written by Tim Seeley. Gorgeous art by Juan Ferreira. And it ties in because it's a story about Batman 666, which we saw Batman 666 show up last issue in this Future State Gotham. And for those not familiar, Batman 666 is basically a future version of Damian Wayne, who went to hell to look for his dad, didn't find him, and ended up getting trapped there, and eventually became kind of this evil version of Batman. So we've got that version of Batman. We've got Jace Fox Batman. We've got, remember, because this is Future State, we've got the regular Bruce Wayne, who everybody thought was dead in Future State, version of Batman. And we also have Hush, who we find out bought at some point an authentic Batman costume with utility belt, and also had plastic surgery to make himself look like Bruce Wayne. He's Batman as well. So you got a lot of Batman in this issue. And it's a little too much. It's Batmen at War Part 2, which is the story, the title, and I don't know, it's not really working that well for me. I got to be honest. I feel like, um, once again, I have to ask the question: who is this book for? Um, they sort of have completely forgotten or put aside the fact that, yeah, this world's never going to exist because future state's never going to come to pass. But forget about all that. Instead, we have 1,000 Batmen and Nightwing. Oh, I forgot about Nightwing. Nightwing is also, Dick Grayson has also become a version of Batman with this weird sort of tiara with bat ears on it and still wears the Nightwing mask. And he's all hopped up on Brain, which is the mental version of Venom, the Venom series, serum. He's a Batman also. So if you can keep that all straight, then yeah, maybe this title's for you. But um, I don't know. This is another one where it alternates between one or two good issues and then a couple bad issues. I still want it to be colored. Maybe it doesn't suit these particular artists. Maybe their art style is better suited to be black and white. That very well might be the case because their style sort of anime style. But the thing is, it's like if you're going for an anime aesthetic or a manga aesthetic, then shouldn't you be telling a manga style story? And maybe this is. Granted, I haven't read a lot of manga, but it doesn't feel like a manga story. It sort of feels like a regular DC superhero story, but kind of dialed up to like two stories, two titles, two volumes mashed up together because there's so much going on. So again, the art style doesn't particularly fit it, especially when it's characters that we recognize. I mean, that's part of the fun, seeing these different versions of characters. Whether it's the second Joker or the future version of Punchline or Harley Quinn or whatever. That's part of the fun of it. But if you're going to do something new and have it be black and white and have it be told in the future, then you should be doing it with new characters. It's like DC's trying to have its cake and eat it too. I mean, at the end of the day, we know why. We know it's called Future State Gotham. We know why it stars Batman because that's what sells. But yet they're trying to capture the people who like manga by doing it black and white with manga style art. Like I don't know. It's kind of like Superman, Son of Kal-El, or Batgirls, for example, that we talked about, or even Jurassic League. Right? It seems to be a running theme this week. It's like DC editorial doesn't know or can't make a decision on what it wants this title to be, because there's any number of directions it could go and be successful, but nobody will make a decision and pick a direction and commit to it, and so it ends up trying to be all these different things. So rather than doing one thing really, really well, it tries to do three or four things, and it doesn't do any of them particularly well. So I don't know. What do you think, Rocky? Because I know you kind of weren't even reading this for a while, or you were kind of skim reading it.
Yeah, I was skim reading it, and I'm exactly like you. When I skim read this one, I actually was taken aback.
I don't know how you can skim read this and even know anything that's going on. It's so convoluted.
Oh, granted, but what stood out when I skim read it was how many different Batman there were. Yeah. I mean, and in fact, when I made notes for it, I just said, okay, we got Bruce Wayne Batman, we got Hush's Batman, we got Jace Fox's Batman, we got Dick Grayson as Batman, and we got Damian as Batman 6666. That's 5 Batman. And then we got Oracle, we got Barbara Gordon as the new Nightwing / Oracle. And we got and for some reason, I guess Batman 666 over basically defeated the magistrate at the beginning of this issue. So I guess if Future State would have continued, or we do understand that in Batman, that in Future State, ultimately Damian would have come back from hell and defeated the magistrate, and then Gotham would have become a hell, and then the hell that Gotham would become would lead in to that really good short story that we got at the end here. That was essentially a reprint. That was of basically Damian having meeting the devil. The executive game is essentially the story written by Tim Seeley, one of Tim Seeley's best short stories, where Damian literally meets up with the devil in Gotham City, and ultimately ends with an allegory or an illusion of the Joker coming back, and it's very well done. So it's I'm a little unclear if they're just using the executive game, this short story by Tim Seeley with Damian coming back, talking with the devil in the executive suite. Is that just simply Was that simply to fill up space, or is it actually maybe related? And is that what Future State would have come after, at the end of this story of Future State? Either way, um, what a I gotta say that if 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 uh, if it wasn't for the plans being upset with AT&T taking over DC or whatever, would Future State? I mean, if this was the end of Future State, if this story was what Future State was intended to be, with this Hush and these 5 different Batman, this is a mess. This is a mess. If DC is experimenting with manga style, because it's been a popular part of pop culture debate about the popularity of manga comics versus and how they're outselling traditional American comic books, et cetera, and looking at the numbers and the stats and everything. Well, if that's the case, well then DC, if you're going to have an open mind about it and experiment with anything approaching a manga style type of comic book, was this it? And if it was, shame on you, because this is not the way to do it.
Yeah, it really doesn't work. So let's move on. It shouldn't take us too long to review this one. It's DC Pride Tim Drake special. We've got 3 stories. They're all written by Megan Fitzmartin, which I want to apologize because I think when we were talking about Tim Drake in the Pride special, and we mentioned the writer that had been writing a lot of Tim Drake previously, we said it was Megan
Fitzpatrick
or Fitzpatrick.
Maybe I said Fitzpatrick. Yeah. That would have been my fault because I think you asked me.
Well, I couldn't even remember her name, so at least you got the first 1.5 of it right. Yeah, I'm sure she gets it all the time, and I'm sure it's never not annoying. So apologies for getting the name wrong. It's Megan Fitzmartin, who clearly has a favorite DC character, and it's clearly Tim Drake, and I'm totally fine with that because Tim Drake's my favorite Robin as well. So the first story she writes is Some of Our Parts. The art is by Belen Ortega, colors by Alejandro Sanchez, and letters by Pat Brosso. This is a 3-part story that appeared in 3 issues of Batman Urban Legends, all presented here together for the first time. It shows the first date with Bernard. It shows him realizing that he's bisexual. So that's the first story. The second story, Happy Holidays, again, written by Megan Fitzmartin. We have Alberto Jimenez Albuquerque as the artist, Nick Filardi on colors, Pat Brosso on letters. This is a holiday story. It appeared in the last DC holiday special. Tim Drake and Bruce story. Nightwing's there as well. It's a very heartfelt story about, can Bruce be happy? Again, Tim Drake having just made this realization in the pages of Batman Urban Legends about his sexuality and wanting to connect with Bruce and that sort of thing. So again, a reprint. And then the final story, The Elephant in the Room, is actually a new story, also written by Megan Fitzmartin. Belen Ortega, the artist, Luis Guerrero on colors, Pat Brosso on letters. And this is a chance for Tim to sort of team up with some of his Justice League teammates that he hasn't seen in a while, and sort of, I don't want to say come out to them, but kind of show them who he is now, where he is now. Specifically Stephanie Brown, who was his girlfriend in his title back in the 90s. That's the thing that a lot of people who may not want Tim Drake to be bisexual might point to. Well, how can he be going out with a guy when he went out with Stephanie Brown? Well, bisexual means both, right? So, there's some good character moments here from Megan, where she's having Tim talk to Stephanie and say, yeah, there was always a part of me that, didn't feel as close to you as maybe I should have. And it was because I wasn't being true to myself. And, it's sort of tropey in a lot of ways, but also, there's some truth behind that. We hear so many people who discover their sexuality a little later in life that say things like that. Something didn't feel quite right. Couldn't put my finger on it, that sort of thing. So it's great to see this, and it provides context for Tim moving forward as he gives kind of a status update, if you will, to these former teammates. Impulse is there. Kal-el is there. Stephanie Brown, as I mentioned, spoilers there, and then Cassandra Cain. So I thought it worked pretty well. and it ends with the little blurb: "See Tim Drake next in DC Crisis Young Justice #1 on sale 6/21/22." So I talked before when we covered the Pride about just taking or needing some time to sort of reorient my mind into this sort of new identity of who Tim Drake is. But I like that these are all presented together in one volume, because one thing it does really, really well, it has this throughput of the plot thread that Megan Fitzmartin kicks the first story off with, the first of the 3-part that appeared in Batman Urban Legends, about Tim really feeling lost in a lot of ways and not knowing what he wants to do. I mean, here's this brilliant guy, right? Was always a genius, was always pushing himself academically in high school, built all the Bat computers and all the technology and whatever. And then he drops out of college, feels a little bit lost. And I think there's a lot of young people or people around his age, early 20s and whatnot, who can relate to that. So I like the voice that Megan Fitzmartin gives to Tim Drake. I've said that from the beginning when she started writing him. And I think this will work. I think I think Tim Drake fans will appreciate this. I liked it. I'm a Tim Drake fan. I would have liked a little more new material. I didn't realize when I first started reading it that it was the first 2 stories were reprints. I mean, about 3 pages in, I'm like, I've read this before. But when I saw the solicit, I didn't, and I saw the preview copy, I didn't realize. But the new story added a lot too. So, what are your thoughts, Rocky? Anything to add?
Not really. I'm always up to in my old conservative ways. I'm always being educated about this homosexuality and bisexuality angle, because I would have looked at this and thought, well, a heterosexual wouldn't have used the excuse that, well, I feel a little bit lost right now, and I'm dating a girl, and then I suddenly the relationship goes awry, and well, well, okay, the implication there seems to be that Tim Drake seemed a little bit lost because he was just discovering that he was bisexual. What does that have to do with him quitting college? What does this have to do with him? I'm not quite getting the whole angsty thing. Uh, but that's I guess what I'm getting at is that if this, I guess that we're told that he's bisexual, not gay. If you're discovering that you're actually gay and you don't have any attraction toward girls, that's one thing. But he's attracted to both, so I'm not sure what his issue was. So he's attracted to both. Most people, if you're heterosexual and you go from girl to girl or boy to boy, you don't think of attributing your problems to your dating life, and yet he does. So I don't. He's attracted to both sexes. So I'm not really sure. This seems. I mean, I don't really see the story here, but and maybe I'm not making a lot of sense, and that's on me. But this is
No,
something.
I think I understand what you're saying. And it may be that maybe your life was planned out, or maybe you knew exactly what you were doing. I relate to it because in my early 20s, I didn't know what the hell I was doing either. So the fact that he's bisexual, it's not, it's not anything sort of physical that's wrong, that's wrong with him. It's just, he's at a place in his life because of everything he's gone through. And he says this in the story. He says it when he talks to Stephanie Brown in that news story at the end. He tells her all this. Yeah, I had pushed myself in high school. I was dealing with, this big family. He uses that word family. He's talking about the Bat family and all the responsibilities of being a hero and all that. And his father being, hero worshiping Batman, and then finding out he was Robin and losing his mom. He's talking about all that stuff that he went through in his teenage years, right? All these expectations, all that kind of stuff. He was expected to go to college. He's expected to do all that stuff, right? Like all the reasons that you could feel lost. I mean, I didn't have the added portion of I'm lost in my early 20s. I don't know what I want to do with my life and my career and what I'm doing, and I change my major like, I don't know, every week it felt like. So I felt lost just dealing with that normal stuff, right? He's got that normal stuff, plus he's got the hero stuff, plus he's realizing that, hey, I might not be heterosexual. He's trying to figure it out. Am I only attracted to girls? Am I only attracted to guys? Am I attracted to both? It's just one more thing he has to carry, right? So it's not that, oh my God, I'm going from guy to girl to guy to girl, or I'm going from girl to girl to girl to girl. It's not about that. It's about he's got this other part. He's lived his whole life with himself, just like everybody does, day in, day out, same face in the mirror, same person. And you think you have this picture in your mind of who you are, and then all of a sudden you find out, oh, who I thought I was might not be who I really am. There's this other part of me. So now there's all this upheaval. This is my interpretation. And maybe, again, I can relate to it
Well,
more because
I think you're
I
right.
went through some stuff like that. So I don't think it's necessarily that it was his, sexual identity. It's just it was one more big thing on top of everything else he's going through. And yeah, I mean, when I say I need to reorient my mind in that this is who Tim is, and I make the mistake of saying, yeah, I've got to accept the fact that he's bisexual. That's not it. The part of it that I don't want to say it bothers me, but the part of it that I have to kind of like get straight in my head is that we were told all throughout the 90s Robin series that Tim was this guy who had his shit together, right? Even though he was a young high school kid, he was the smartest one. That's what part of what made him so interesting and beloved, because he figured out who Batman was. He didn't have the kind of the drawbacks or the negatives that Dick Grayson or Jason Todd had, and losing their parents, and he still had his mom and dad. And so it was just like, he was like this thing to strive for, kind of up on this pedestal of, man, wouldn't it be cool to be the Tim Drake version of Robin? Cause he's the smartest guy and he's a superhero and he's all these things. Right. And now all of a sudden we're told, well, man, he really didn't have it all together. It's like seeing your hero has feet of clay. I mean, he hasn't gone to that point because he hasn't done anything that, you consider, making poor choices out of malice or greed or some kind of negative personality trait. He's just sort of lost. And so it's like, wait, this guy that I looked up to turns out to not be so great, And I think that's the interesting part about the story that Megan Fitzmartin is telling here and that DC is telling, because I think a lot of people, they look at Tim Drake and they saw him as like this thing to aspire to, and you find out, no, he's not so perfect after all. And that, to me, that's what's interesting. Now it's a story of this guy that you thought you knew. And again, even for, it's the same story for himself. He thought he knew himself. Now he's got to rediscover himself. That's what's interesting to me. And that's my take on it anyway.
Yeah. And just, I'm happy because I would think that if you're, since he swings both ways, I mean, he could, there's a lot of attractive superheroes in the DC universe. He's got more options now. So he's got, he's got a reason to be much more happy because, whatever floats his boat. I mean, there's all kinds of options there. So
yeah, I mean, why isn't John going out with him instead of Jay?
Exactly. Why not? There's a part of me that, DC would never do this, but it would seem to me that, how many of us actually stay with our first date, our first love? I mean, come on. So, Jay Nakamura and John Kent are destined to break up. Tim Drake and Bernard are destined, guaranteed to break up. You'd never stay with your first one ever. Of course not.
Yeah,
you're not
come on,
insane.
DC. Give us the true world's finest. Tim Drake and John Kent.
I figure that's got to be on the horizon. And plus, if they're going to be true to form here, and they are in fact bisexual, well, then we better see some same-sex relationships too coming up for Tim Drake and John Kent, because after all, they're bisexual. And I still want John Kent to get together with Saturn Girl, because they never did do the nasty. All they did was kiss. And mind you, that's all, I'm just saying, I'm putting that out there. You got to remember, if it's bi, that means you got to enjoy both. So, hey, if you're going to do it for, if you're going to cater to both audiences, then cater to both audiences.
Yeah, it probably won't be too long before we'll get the triangle, right? Where like maybe it's John, maybe it's Tim. Like Tim's dating Bernard, but he's attracted to some girl, and he can't decide. Should I go out with this girl? Should I be going out with Bernard?
I want Jay Nakamura to say, John, I noticed that you're going to the 31st century quite a bit lately. Is there something I should know?
I don't know. Actually, one of the things the first thing I thought when Jay, I didn't mention this, but the first thing I thought when I saw Jay without his mask and it said the nightmare begins. Is I wonder if they're going to kill him.
Yeah,
And that, because you got to admit that John is a pretty empathetic hero,
yeah,
and he doesn't seem to really he doesn't seem to lose it. You don't ever worry about John going Damian Wayne style, right? Killing people or
exactly.
anything like that. But
Yeah,
maybe if he loses Jay, that would be a rough lesson for him to learn early on.
it is, and it could
Anyway,
happen. You never know.
yeah, let's move on. You'll have much more to say about this than I will. It's Sandman Universe Nightmare Country. James Tynion is the writer, Lissandro Esterin as the artist, Patricio Del Pesce on colors, Simon Bolin on letters. And then there's a sequence, The Dreaming, pages 14 to 17, with guest artist Francesco Francavilla. What'd you think?
I'm really enjoying this series, and I come into this series being very Sandman ignorant. So, in my view, I say with a degree of bias here that if I can understand what's going on, I'm pretty sure anybody can. And like I say, I really enjoy this. I We got the agony and the ecstasy, who are they're working for somebody that wants to control the nightmares, and this character called the Corinthian is somebody who exists between the Dream King and the forgotten dreams. So if you think of, there's a Dream King that controls, he creates nightmares and dreams to help us learn about ourselves, because we learn things about ourselves in our dreams and our nightmares. And then we have our forgotten dreams, what we forget about. And in between, we have the shores of night. And and the Corinthian, this lead character, he walks along the shores of night, so to speak, because that's this comic book speaks in that kind of metaphor, and that's what I like about it. Because I've said before, I'm a broken record. I'm a sucker for good metaphor, and this is just ripe with it, and I really like it. But somebody is screwing up the nightmares. Somebody is utilizing the nightmares, and this character, this lead character, this Madison Flynn, is a character that seems to have the ability of upsetting this person who's trying to there's this malevolent force who is sending out these assassins called the Agony and the Ecstasy to kill Madison Flynn, because there's something special about Madison Flynn. We don't know what it is yet. We're only at issue 3, but it's really good. And I just want to give, for those who are fans of Something is Killing the Children, if for those who are used to reading Something is Killing the Children, there's a very cinematic feel to Something is Killing the Children. For example, on page 8 of this issue 3, it ends with a cliffhanger. It ends with, not a cliffhanger, but it ends with a scene that's very horrific, where she sees this blob-like creature. Madison Flynn sees this blob-like creature, and then all of a sudden, just like in a movie, the next page you see the credits. Nightmare Country, Sandman Universe presents. So there's a cinematic feel to it, and that's exactly what Tinian is very much copying his style that works so well for him and brings him so much success in Something is Killing the Children. He's bringing that same sensibilities here to this. And I should also note that the artist here, Alessandro Ethrin, is in many ways, I think, trying to copy some of that eerie tones that we see in Something is Killing the Children. Even the colors are very similar to Something is Killing the Children. Under Delurtho, where I always butcher her name, the artist on Something's Killing the Children, Death or Lawerda, whatever. My apologies to her, but in any event, this is a good series. It's not as good as Something is Killing the Children, but I'm really curious to see where this is going to go. This involves a Republican senator who's having an affair with Madison Flynn's good friend, and he's a Republican senator, but he seems to be a good guy. He's going to help Madison deal with the nightmares, so it sort of challenges our sensibilities, because I think we all have preconceptions about Republican senators. We might tend to think of corruption depending on what side of the political spectrum you're on, and Tinian here deals with that, but I think he challenges our expectations and our points of view about these characters, and I think it works really well. I don't know. I'm questioning everybody. I'm wondering who is at everyone's motives here. Who's really the bad guy? What's going on? I'm really enjoying this, and I wish more people would check this out, because I think it's definitely it's a worthy mantle to the Sandman universe, and I'm unfamiliar with the Sandman universe, but this Corinthian character really has me going. It really has my interest. And this agony and ecstasy characters are the most eerie, awful, scary looking characters I've seen. They look horrific. The ecstasy is has this he puts the Joker to shame with his smile, and it's definitely worth a read if you guys can pick it up digitally or if you see it at your local shop, because I do think, or pick it up as a trade inevitably, because this is worth a read.
Yeah, I'm not a big Sandman guy either. Um, but yeah, this is a lot of fun. I am fascinated by this Republican senator and what his motivations might be. We see him meeting with an angel earlier in the issue. Um, so yeah, this is interesting. These two psychopath, Agassi and Ecstasy, um, they're interesting. But ultimately, the reason I keep coming back to this series is the Corinthian and the eyes for teeth visual, which is just so both fascinating and horrifying and intriguing all at the same time. And maybe the best thing about this particular issue are the three covers. The main cover has the Corinthian holding a piece of steak up to his eye on a fork and biting it like you would biting it with your mouth, which is crazy. There's a Francesco Francavilla cover where we see the Corinthian's face hovering over the Sea of Nightmares, which has everything to do with him sitting on the shore and explaining how he travels from the world of the dreaming to the real world. And then the final one is kind of this pastiche of a toothpaste ad. Pedescent, as in possessed, is the name of the toothpaste. And it says, "Bloodstained smiles no more." And the Corinthians there smiling with all three of his sets of teeth. So, I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about sort of the ludicrousness, but also the hook that this series has. Pulls you in for sure. So, okay, up next, again, I'm not sure. I apologize. I don't know why Blood Syndicate for the second issue in a row doesn't have a credits page. There are some credits on the front cover. We know it's written by Jeffrey Thorne. Chris Koss does, I think he's doing the line art along with Juan Castro, and then Will Quintana, he's a color artist, so he must be doing the colors. Not exactly sure how it all breaks down. I don't know. We've seen in the past that Chris Koss would do layouts and he would have somebody finish over him. So maybe that's what Juan Castro is doing. Again, not sure. But this was one of my favorite books of the week from DC. Tons of action, a really intriguing story. My only complaint about it, it's the same complaint I had last time. And again, I'm not a person of color, obviously. Jeffrey Thorne is, so maybe he's drawing from personal experience. But there's a lot of slang in this vocabulary. There's a lot of colloquialisms. And while it might work now, you go back and you read some comic books by writers who did that at the time, and it really dates the books. They don't age well at all. And I'm specifically thinking of a lot of early Gary Friedrich Ghostwriter, where there's a lot of groovy and far out man kind of stuff. And it's tough to read that stuff now. So, you know, I would hate to see that happen to this, because I am enjoying what's going on as we're getting to know Hannibal, this soldier who was raised in a house where his father is a preacher, but somewhat hypocritical. You know, no flexibility, no sort of empathy or understanding as a parent. You know, everything was very rigid. Being the streets of Dakota that Hannibal grew up on, you kind of joined a gang or got the crap beat out of you. So, of course, he joined a gang, you know, ended up getting in trouble, had people after him, joined the army to sort of get away from it, went to the Middle East, fought in multiple tours. I think it was in Afghanistan, somewhere in the Middle East. But anyway, ended up becoming Muslim, gaining powers. In this issue, he goes back and tries to talk to his father, and it's clear there's no common ground there, and it gives some context for Hannibal. And again, he has these powers, ability to manifest these guns. That's interesting. And then at the end, there's a character, and I think we've seen him before. Like maybe he was in the first issue, but I don't recall. Or maybe he was in.
He was at the end of the first issue. Yeah, you're talking about Holocaust.
Holocaust, yeah.
Yeah.
What I was going to say is, didn't we see him in another Milestone book before this? I feel like we saw him before last issue, even. But maybe I'm misremembering. But anyway,
I don't remember, but you might be right.
Yeah, but anyway, he is a very powerful character. Can control fire or manifest fire in some way. His powers are clearly fire based. But I love how fast paced. I love how much action. I love the stakes that Jeffrey Thorne has established early on. Like, people die in this book. Like, it's not, this isn't for the faint of heart, as it were. So in that way, it's, he's really saying something about kind of gang life and violence and, the crime and what's going on in inner cities where they're sort of cannibalizing their, younger generations. And that's, not a good thing. So, I'm really enjoying this. I just worry a little bit about the vocabulary and if it's going to age well. But anyway, what were your thoughts, Rocky?
I enjoy this. The character work here is incredible. And again, I come in here with no preconceived notions or knowledge of the Blood Syndicate from the 1996 milestone line. This is all new to me. I have reading some other reviews. Your comments are noted about the dialogue is very authentic here. At least I have every reason to believe it's authentic. And this is going to sound really kind of maybe a little bit funny, but I found this easier to understand in parts of the dialogue when I read it out loud to myself, and I tried to duplicate the tones myself. You can imagine for yourself to some humorous effect of me trying to sound, like an African American gangster. But I actually did. I thought the language does sound very authentic, and it does work for me. I think it might age well a little bit better than what you might suspect. But having said that, I love this Hannibal character who I had to Google this because one thing Jeffrey Thorne does here, I had to struggle with the names. I had to be very careful and reread it to get the names. It is Hannibal, who is actually the Wise Son. That's actually his superhero name is Wise Son. And Hannibal spent 4 years in the Middle East in the army, and he came back a Muslim. And Hannibal had an experience in the Middle East where he was confronted by this female character, deity / superhero. I'm not sure who she is, but she basically, I'm assuming he got his superpowers from her, and it was implied that he was part of an army that maybe was following orders and wiped out a village, and she was injured, and he ends up surviving and getting these powers. He ultimately ends up converting to Muslim and worshiping Allah, which brings him into conflict with his father, who's very Christian. I got the impression his father, I believe, was Christian Orthodox, but there's obviously some religious conflict there. He makes Hannibal, the character work again here, I think is just great. Hannibal makes the comment to his dad that, if God was ever in our house, how come I had to go to some desert halfway around the world for him to find me? And I thought that was very poignant and very powerful. And it says something about him. And he was always looking for some way to fit in. And Hannibal had clearly a childhood where he was involved in gangland activities with the Blue Street Syndicate, where ultimately he probably got into trouble more than once, which didn't help his relationship with his mother or his father. He's got a son named Hadrian and a girlfriend who, the mother of his son, who he's paying child support for the last 4 years. He hasn't seen in 4 years. She doesn't even want him to see his son. So he's got some parenting issues and problems. And so Hannibal is very angry. He's bitter. He's pissed off. He's a flawed person. He's got this past. He's got a bad relationship with his father. Meanwhile, he's under pressure from other gang members to pick a side. They're saying, look, just because you got superpowers now, there's a power vacuum in Dakota City. Icon and Rocket have cleaned up all the drug czars. They've gotten rid of them. There's this power vacuum. And this character named Holocaust is moving in to fill in that gap. And they're basically telling Hannibal's friend Carlos his friend Obi, Old Boy, is telling him, you got to pick a side. And at the end of this issue, it's really amazing. Again, I just love it because Hannibal ends up with his friend Obi, and they're in. I don't know if Obi was there, but he was at this sort of gang meeting where he's thinking about joining a gang, and Holocaust shows up and says, "Nah, I'm the guy that's going to be leading the gang. You guys got to follow me. If you don't follow me, I'm going to kill you." And Holocaust has no problem wiping them all out. But of course, Hannibal's superpowers are invulnerability and strength, and so he ends up surviving. And so that we're already by the end of issue 2, and we got some really good build up here. Ultimately, this is going to I'm looking forward to the inevitable confrontation between Hannibal and Holocaust. And again, this is just really good writing. This is getting right in. I like the language. At first, the language turned me off. The use of the language, it was frustrating a little bit for me, but it's part of the culture, and it feels like this is a part of the a portion of the American landscape that I'm kind of unfamiliar with. But let's be blunt, we see it on TV all the time, so it's not like we're unfamiliar with it. And I like the fact that Jeffrey Thorne unapologetically he drops us in it, and he doesn't insult our intelligence. He also doesn't spoon feed us. He lets us get into the world, and it works better here than his efforts in Green Lantern. And I think that he's learned some things from his lessons in Green Lantern. He's got a lot of characters here with Blood Syndicate, but I think he does a better job handling the character work and the pacing than he did in Green Lantern. And I hope it keeps up because I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, again, the language thing. The thing about it is it's so into the slang that it almost becomes like a parody of it. Like not every black person speaks that way all the time. So that's the part where I'm like, but again, am I the one that should be making that judgment? I don't know. Maybe they do. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but I mean,
I have no idea. But
yeah, it sometimes it's like it feels a little bit too much. Like Jeffrey Thorne's trying a little bit too hard, to make it feel authentic. But again, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm reading into that. But anyway, that does it for the regular books that are out this week. We do have quite a few collections from DC. We've got Catwoman of East End, omnibus hardcover with a beautiful Darwin Cook cover. Aquaman, The Becoming, the entire series is collected, all 6 issues. Justice League Last Ride trade paperback, which written by Chip Zdarsky, gorgeous art by Miguel Mendoza. Really, really recommend that. I didn't hear a lot of people talking about it at the time it came out, but Rocky and I both really, really enjoyed it. We've got Batman, The Adventure Continues, Season 2 trade paperback. Midnighter, the complete collection trade paperback. And then Crush and Lobo, that series by Mariko Tamaki, trade paperback. And I will say that the Midnighter trade paperback, it's a trade paperback, complete collection. That complete collection, it's the 2015 series, DC Rebirth, that written by Steve Orlando, that's collected in that trade. So. And I think, and then there's a poster book as well, DC Poster Portfolio, DC Pride trade paperback, which collects 20 oversized removable posters suitable for print, framing and display. They're basically the variant covers and the pinups that were in DC Pride 22. So if you enjoyed those pinups, if you enjoyed those variant covers and you want to be able to hang them on your wall, you can pick up that DC Poster Portfolio. So that's going to do it.
We should give a shout out.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's one more. There for DC Universe Infinite Digital First. There's Young Justice Targets
right.
#1, which is again, it's for fans of Young Justice. I did read this Young Justice Targets Digital First, and it's clear that you'd benefit much more if you've been watching the Young Justice cartoon, because it's clearly in that continuity. But it is interesting. It involves many characters. I think it's well worth the read for people that are fans of the cartoon, which has gotten some very good reviews on the and Warner, so it's worth checking out. So inevitably, usually they end up printing it as a comic book at some point, but it's probably worth checking out if you're a Young Justice fan. This is the actual Young Justice that when people say they are a fan of Young Justice, I would suggest most of them actually mean this Young Justice, the cartoon, especially if they're non-comic book readers, because this is much different than. Do not confuse this with Bendis's Young Justice. It's a very, very different iteration.
Yeah, that's a good point. So, that's going to do it for this episode, everybody. Don't forget, check out our New Comics Wednesday episode on Wednesday, spoiler-free reviews of Marvel and some of the other independents that are coming out. I do have an interview coming up with another creator on Thursday, for an independent book. I'm not going to say who it is. I'll let it be a surprise, but it was a super fun chat. Somebody's been on the show before. Also, yesterday, I had an episode drop about a prose anthology called Generation Wonder. Bunch of short stories by some people who are famous authors, some people who are famous comic book writers who've never actually written prose before, like Sterling Gates and Paul Levitz. But they're fantastic stories. It's like over 300 pages of stories, anthologies about some really great superheroes, all original characters. There's not going to be, any DC or Marvel or what have you, but it's definitely worth checking out. So I got to talk to one of the writers who have also edited the anthology, Barry Liga. So I encourage you to check that out. And I think that's probably going to be it for this week. You got anything coming up, Rocky, you want to tease?
No, it's just I wish I did. I'm just too busy at work. I'm busy with summer and renovations and yard work. But who knows? I will give a shout out. I will encourage people, if they haven't already checked out, or check out Trevor Fernandez Lenkevich's Area 51 the Helix project. We just did a Kickstarter interview with him to kick off the Kickstarter campaign for issue number 5 of that series. So check out, that's on the channel, and also will be on the Comic Source podcast as well. So beyond that, just happy reading comics, everyone, and have a good week.
Yeah, I second that. Good luck to Trevor with his campaign for issue number 5. Amazing. He's had 4 successful campaigns, 2 more to go to get this whole series out into the world. He's come a long way in just a year. And again, our best wishes to Tim Sale, wishing him a speedy recovery for whatever health issues he's having.
Certainly.
Again, we've lost way too many comic legends recently, and I sure hope Tim Sale is not going to be added to that list. So again, thanks everybody for listening. Be sure you head over to YouTube, do a search for Rocky's channel, comic space boom exclamation point. Subscribe, like this video, ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out. You guys know how to do it. Conversely, if you check us out on YouTube all the time and you want to be sure not to miss any of the audio-only Comic Source content, just do a search for the Comic Source on your favorite podcast platform or app. Find the Comic Source, subscribe, and it'll be right there on your smart device to listen to on the subway or in your car or while you're sitting at your desk at work. So we appreciate the support as always, and we will talk to you next time.
See you later.